Welcome to your one and only psychology crash course. Today's learning outcome is B11. Describe one ethical consideration at the biological level of analysis. Let's get started. Psychological studies can provide insight into a wide variety of natural phenomena, ranging from love to loyalty to memory. However, there's one thing that all studies must have in common.
What would that be?
Thanks to institutions like the APA, the American Psychological Association, and local IRBs, which are institutional review boards that go through pending psychological studies before they are started, modern psychological studies abide by a set of ethical guidelines which are set in order to protect the health and safety of participants, whether it be animals or people. Ethics are very necessary in order to maintain universal and moral codes when working with living, breathing, and functioning organisms. And this is very important in psychology as we look into the minds of organisms, and so we have to ensure that they are treated well. So, what common ethical rules do you think exist?
I would say that participants need to be asked before they are put in a study because asking permission is the right way to go.
Perfect! That falls under the ethical consideration that we will discuss today, which is informed consent. Not only should psychologists ask permission before conducting research on their participants, they should also advise and educate participants about the study before obtaining consent, so participants know what they are getting themselves into.
Right, I would want to know what I'm signing up for sure.
Participants need to be willing in their participation, meaning that their participation was not forced or involuntary. Also, consent needs to be informed, meaning that participants know what the study entails, such as the aim and the methodology and any tasks the participants might be subjected to, and how the data will be collected and presented. Also, minors, which are people under the age of 18, will need a parent or guardian consent form so that whoever takes care of them can consent in their place. Lastly, informed consent should be as detailed and clear as possible to avoid any misunderstandings before getting started with the study.
Wow, that really makes sense. If I was a participant, I would feel safe to participate if I gave informed consent to researchers.
Now let's get into some methodology. Let's get started with the methodology of Milner and Scoville, 1957. HM is the subject of this longitudinal case study that spanned over 40 years. He was a man living with epileptic seizures, so he got a surgical procedure in his brain done to mitigate these effects. And this was done by Scoville, who was a professor at the time. This surgical procedure involved an apartial temporal lobe resection, which involved the removal of 8 centimeters of brain tissue from the anterior area of HM's hippocampus. This resulted in anterograde amnesia, meaning that HM could no longer form new memories. However, his old memories from before the surgical procedure were still intact. As he was unable to remember new information, he was unable to give proper consent in order to further the cognitive investigation. So, the researchers were given consent by proxy, meaning that those that were HM's guardians or parents or relatives or whoever took care of him consented in his place to being tested and studied. Later, a PhD student of Scoville's, Milner, studied HM in the long term for around 40 years with various degrees of cognitive testing. One of these tests involved HM drawing a star while looking at a mirror. The act of drawing the star by looking at a mirror took a lot of time to learn for HM. Once he got proficient, he was often surprised that he was so good. When he actually had practiced many times before, he thought that he was really good at doing it, but he just forgot all of his previous learning.
That was easy.
Informed consent is a major part of psychological research and ethical guidelines,
and should be obtained before starting testing on participants. In the case of HM, this was not possible, as he would have forgotten what he was told the very next day. And besides, he didn't understand his situation, as it was psychologically impossible with his anterograde amnesia. However, the researchers still obtained consent from those HM was cared for by, The ethical consideration of informed consent is vital to psychological research and is very important in order to ensure the safety and security of participants.